Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I have a tutorial on how I made this kind of Squishmallow inspired pumpkin. It's basically just a plushie pumpkin with a memory foam core to allow it to rise back up just like a squishy would, but obviously it's a plush. So to start off with, you'll need to make the inside of the pumpkin, and to do this I just took a real chunky block of memory foam. You can do this with any other type of sponge that you want to, that you can get your hands on. I do recommend memory foam as it is like a lot better at rising and stuff like that, but if you don't have it, then car wash sponges, dish sponges, anything like that, quite big and chunky will do. So what I did was I just kind of shaped it into a rough sphere using my scissors, just chopping away at it, rounding it into a kind of really wonky ball. What I then did was I took some of this orange fabric, and this is actually by a brand called Shannon fabrics, and I just made sure to kind of get like the plush kind of hairs. Oh my goodness, what is that called? Anyway, I just made sure that I would get like the plush fibers going in the right direction that I wanted to kind of go round. And I then took the ball and kind of rolled it out onto the plush fabric, and I just kind of did 2 dots where I thought like the top and the bottom of the ball would be, and then I just kind of made this kind of petal like shape joining up those 2 dots. I then cut these out roughly, and this was what was going to make up the body of my pumpkin. I decided to kind of slow this bit down for you guys so that you could kind of see it a bit better, so that you're able to make a pattern in the size that you want. So yeah, like I said, you just want to roll your ball around to get like the size so that it meets at the top point and the bottom point, just like here. Mine was slightly too big and it was over like the halfway mark, so I actually just cut mine down to the size that I drew out rather than leaving any kind of stitching edge. So I actually went ahead and cut a few more of these sections off of camera. I actually made 5 in total, as I figured that would be the correct amount to make it all the way around the pumpkin. What I then did was pinned 2 together around that ball, making about 1 centimeter overlapping, and then just taking a needle and thread, I just stitched from one point all the way around to the other, making it nice and curved all the way around. I also made sure that the pins were kind of sticking in the memory foam to allow me to kind of move it around without it kind of pulling away from the foam. I did actually pin a few where it didn't pin into the memory foam, and I must admit it was so much easier when I actually pinned into the memory foam to keep all the fabric in place. So I basically just went ahead and added in each section, stitching all the way around like I did on the first one, and I just took it section by section, doing each one focusing on one side at a time. Now, if you don't like sewing, you can of course use fabric glue. I would recommend pinning all the pieces in place first, and then just kind of like gluing them down and pinning them into place afterwards, so that like the fabric glue can dry and set really nicely and tight around the actual ball. But yeah, I think stitching would be easier for this type of tutorial, but you can always try it with fabric glue, that is not a problem. So anyway, when I moved on to the last piece, I just stitched down one of the sides and I kind of left the other one. And I actually took this to my sewing machine because I didn't feel like my stitching was going to be strong enough. So I actually just went to my sewing machine and stitched over all of those kind of lines that I had like hand stitched. Some people may argue that was a complete waste of time me doing that, but you know, I just didn't feel like my stitching was strong enough. I probably could have gone over it again by hand, but as I have a sewing machine set up all the time, I figured it would just be quicker for me to do that. It's not 100% necessary for you to have a sewing machine, but you know, as I had one, I just used it. So yeah, I just want to make that clear. Anyway, so I just removed it through that hole that I kind of left unstitched, and I actually just covered that memory foam ball in some cling film. I did this as a suggestion from my previous tutorial on one of these where I kind of didn't, and someone suggested putting cling film on it and piercing a few holes to make it more slow rising, and this definitely did work, so yeah, I would recommend doing this also. So once I had the cling filmy memory foam ball complete, I then popped it inside of the fabric. I did kind of like obviously turn it the right side way around, and I popped it inside. This is when I realised that my stitching was like a little bit loose, so I actually just went ahead and stuffed it with some toy stuffing, just to kind of plump it out a little bit and make the pumpkin a little bit fatter. So taking my needle and thread, I just started stitching up the very last hole, making sure that each side of that hole were kind of folded in so that I had a neat edge. I just went ahead and used a conceal ladder stitch. I do believe it's called a ladder stitch, but don't quote me on that, but basically just a concealed stitch all the way up. What I then did was I kind of added some more toy stuffing inside to make it more plump, as it was still a little bit loose, and then I just carried on stitching, and when I had a small hole again, I added some more toy stuffing, and then I just stitched it completely shut. So next I wanted to make a little stalk of a pumpkin, so then I took some green wool felt, and this was just a little offcut that I had left over from a previous project. I popped a little line of hot glue on one end and rolled it nice and tight. I popped another little line of hot glue and then rolled it onto that and held it down. Once this glue had dried, which literally took a matter of seconds, I just cut off the excess and then I snipped it down to size. I then bent this little felt kind of stalk around just so it's a little bit curved, and added on some more hot glue and just hot glued that to the top of the plush. I held it there for a good few seconds. So once the stalk was completely done, what I then did was took my finger and kind of licked it, which is quite gross when I think about it, but I licked it so that I could kind of get the plush fabric to kind of sit down, and then with some puffy paint I just started painting on the eyes with a small brush. This is definitely a technique that I do recommend just to get the fibers kind of pointing in one direction so they are able to paint circles more neatly. Now when I was doing this, I didn't realise how small these little tiny eyes were, so I did actually go ahead and redo them. I made them slightly bigger than I had done here once this paint had completely dried. I then moved on and I did the same technique for the mouth in between the two eyes. I just made sure that all the fibers were kind of sticking downwards, and then I painted on the mouth just like I wanted. Now I did find this face super cute, like right here, just look at that, I think it looks so sweet. It's almost a bit like the Sumiko Gurashi kind of faces, which you guys know I love. But I carried on anyway and did my usual open mouth face that I absolutely love to put on everything because I think it's so super cute. Just in case you guys don't have any fabric paint or anything like that, another great way to get a face on would be to sew little bits of felt on or little bits of fabric, or you know, you could use a Sharpie pen. I wouldn't really recommend that, but I know some people have done that in the past. Anyway, what I then did was I took some white puffy paint and some pink fabric paint, and I just went ahead and painted on a few more details once the black had completely dried. I used my dotting tool and the pink fabric paint just to paint on a tongue on the mouth, and then taking some white puffy paint, I just added some highlight to the eyes. I did a bigger kind of larger dot towards the top and then a smaller dot toward the middle of the eye just to add as like a double highlight, because I'm kind of digging that right now. I think it looks super cute. I then decided I wanted to add some blush. I don't know if I prefer it with or without, but you know, I decided to do that also because I still had a lot of pink fabric paint kind of on my pan, and then I just set that to dry. So once fully dry, as you can see, the plushie squishy is then complete. I think it looks so super cute even just as a plush, but the fact that it is slightly squishy and it rises back up by itself is kind of even better, because you kind of get a 2-in-1, and who doesn't want a 2-in-1? Because, you know, if you guys have been watching my channel for the longest of times, you know that I love plushies and I love squishies. Like, I love them both so much because they're just so nice, and when things are fuzzy it's even better because then you can hug it, and who doesn't want to hug someone so cute? because I know I do. Anyway, so as you can see, it squishes really nicely in your hands. It's not the most slow rising thing on the earth, just because I feel like I could have made it bigger, like the actual memory foam in the middle, but you know, that's the size of my memory foam that I had. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!